There is a hidden history that has been deliberately obfuscated from the people of the world. That's why I'm on the trail of the Nephilim. Today is January 14th. This is On the Trail of the Nephilim, and of course, our daily UFO report. So this picture on the screen is taken from this book, and it's when I was out in Catalina Island, I was privy to a cache of records that hadn't been looked at in 50 or 60 years. I'll get into that and so much more. But first, a word from our sponsor, Noble Gold. Our government is still borrowing money. Sorry, printing money, $5 trillion in new money to be exact. What could possibly go wrong? Meanwhile, back at D.C., consumer confidence hit a 10-year low. Inflation, 6.8%, with parts of the U.S. seeing rates as high as 8%. Something's not adding up, folks, is it? So what can you do? You can play it safe. Putting some of your assets into precious metals will keep your money away from the volatility of the markets. And this month, Noble Gold is giving away a free 1/10 of an ounce solid gold American Eagle coin with any qualifying plan you select. So talk to an expert at Noble Gold, and they'll run through the options for keeping your money safe. No pressure, no hassle, no call centers. Just a chance to speak to someone who knows what they're talking about for once. How refreshing would that be? Call us. 877-646-5347. That's 877-646-5347, or visit our website at noblegoldinvestments.com. That's noblegoldinvestments.com. Thanks for all your prayers. I'm definitely on the mend. I've been taking a course of ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine, of course, with zinc, the Z-Stack, and the whole deal, and lots of sleep, lots of water. I'm definitely out of the woods, on the mend, feeling great. Oxygen levels up over 96, 97%, no fever. So it was probably Omicron, which I contracted, highly contagious, but certainly the symptoms, it's rude. It's like getting a really bad flu, but I came down with it on Monday night, and here it is Friday, and I'm 85% back, and it's just good to be back in the saddle here. But when I was out on Catalina Island, and some of you have heard the story before, and I'll just repeat it quickly here, there was a cache of records that had been missing for like decades by the so-called archaeologist Ralph Glidden. Ralph had a museum on the island. He was conducting primitive archaeological digs, and we underlined the word primitive. Not a lot of records were kept. There's pictures of skeletons, but there's no ruler next to the skeleton, which is maddening. So you have no idea what you're really looking at. The smoking gun that we did get, of course, is the iconic picture with Ralph leaning on the shovel. We've talked about that before. It's in other episodes. I won't belabor the point, but there was a 9-footer there. So it took me about 6-8 months to negotiate with the museum to be allowed to look at the records. And finally, I was able to go in and look. And the first thing that John Boragina, who is the curator of that museum, he said, L.A., what do you want to see? I said, John, let me look at the pictures. So he goes in and he takes out a museum box, brings a museum box, sets it down on the table. There were 2 8-foot-long tables covered with white cloth. I was wearing white gloves. I don't believe I was wearing a mask, but I might have been wearing a mask. These are old photographs. Everything had already been combed over, sorted out, cataloged, in files, in museum boxes. Well, most of you are aware of that picture. Let me just, what the heck, right? It's No Tie Friday, and I'm having fun. So let me see if I can just pull this up real quick here, because it really became one of the iconic pictures that, here we go, right here. So yeah, this is the picture that went viral. It's right here, right there. That's the picture that I discovered on Catalina Island, right there. And it shows Ralph Glidden standing upright next to a large skeleton. That picture was actually looked at by 3 different researchers, digitized it, looked at it from all different angles. They could figure out how far away the camera was, all sorts of interesting data. There was no collusion between the 3 guys, and they all put it just around 9 feet. So we have a 9-footer there. Well, there was this other picture that I discovered out on Catalina. And first of all, how many fingers do you see here? Count them. There's 6, because the skeleton, let me get this right, that's his right hand. He's like this. So the hand is over, I'll tilt my arm down so you can see it. The hands are like this. The fingers are like this, rather. So you see those fingers, but the thumb is tucked underneath, so you don't see it. So let's count them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The thumb would be underneath. 6. Look at the one right back in here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I believe that's the thumb, which has been detached from the hand. Now, it'd be very interesting to get a forensic anthropologist's take on this, but there's no way that the hand in the foreground next to the bowl is a 5-fingered. I mean, there's just no way that the thumb is missing, and I would posit that thumb is below the arm, and that's why you don't see it. So interestingly enough, there was a bowl there. Now, John Boragina, the former curator of the Catalina Island Museum, knew all these artifacts. I mean, he lived it and breathed it. He knew what size these bowls would be. It's not, well, it's somewhat conjecture on Boragina's part to say that this probably was a 6-inch bowl based on what just the way it looked and his knowledge of all the artifacts coming off Catalina. So he figured that the scale of the skeleton, and I had one of the researchers do this, which is just incredible. The scale of skeleton based on the bowl size. So if the bowl is 6 inches, which is what's here, then we'd have an 8.75, basically a 9-footer. If the bowl is 12 inches, which I doubt it would be, then we'd have a 17-footer. So if it's anywhere in between, of course, if it's a 4-inch bowl, then it goes down. I get that. Boragina believed, as I do, that that's the original, that this was not a 4-inch bowl based on his study of all the artifacts on Catalina Island. So something is going on here, folks. We have from Native Americans, and let me go to the next slide. That's the original picture. Now remember, this is a 5x7 black and white photo. I'm taking a photograph of the photograph, and that's what we're looking at. But all this has been scrubbed away. You'll also notice here, take a look at the orbits, the eye sockets, how large they are. Look how large the eye sockets are. So let's move on. This is right from the book. Chuck Missler and others have discovered from Native American sources the real reason for doing this. So back up. This is a sort of a colorful anecdotal story, but I believe it's based in fact. When Native Americans would do this, right, they would raise their hand up like this to show that they only had 5 fingers, not 6. Because the 6-digit guys are the ones you wanted to stay away from. So Mr. states Native Americans were terrified of the 6-fingered people. The idea of greeting people with the hand was to see if there was a 6-digit. I realized that polydactyl is a medical abnormality, but it seems to be one of the markings of the Nephilim, as we read in the Bible in 2 Samuel, excuse me. So, and there was again war at Gath, where was a man of great stature that had on every hand 6 fingers, and on every foot 6 toes, 4 and 20 in number. And he also was born to the giant. Let me stop right there. This line has always been very problematic to me, because I've always wondered whether the giants were able to reproduce. In other words, are Nephilim like a mule? Are they able to reproduce at all? It seems like they're able to reproduce, as crazy as that sounds. Now, I don't know. What is interesting, and for any of you who are watching this, polydactylism, the idea of a 6-digit on the hand or the foot, is not a common genetic defect, as it were, but it's fairly common. That doesn't mean you have Nephilim blood in you, okay? It's just one of the markers, apparently, of this tampering, this commingling of the seed war, which goes back to Genesis 3:15. This is paramount in our discussion. Unless we come to terms with Genesis 3:15 and understand that there's a seed war, the seed of the dragon will be at enmity at war with the seed of the woman. Messiah will come, crush the dragon's head, the dragon will bruise his heel. That sets up the rest of the biblical narrative. So why should we be surprised? Isn't it interesting? Where are these giants? Where are the Nephilim positioned? They are positioned in the Levant, in the Holy Land, in that piece of real estate that God looks at and goes, that's mine. That's the nation of Israel. It's my land. Which is why when Jesus returned, if I can digress just for a second, he returns to the Mount of Olives and splits that baby in two. Can't wait to see that. And I think we will see it. So he goes back to where? Jerusalem, Mount of Olives. That his foot his feet touch the Mount of Olives, and that thing splits in two, and rightfully so. It needs to split in two. This is the King of Kings, Lord of Lords, coming back and claiming planet Earth finally for his kingdom, which will, he'll rule here for 1,000 years. I'm not making this up. Look at Scripture. It's all there. So let's do this again. And when he defied Israel, Jonathan, the son of Shimei, David's brother, slew him. There were four born to the giant in Gath, and they fell by the hand of David and by the hand of his servants. So it seems like the giant is able to procreate. This line has troubled the heck out of me ever since I read it, I don't know, decades ago, because I used to think that the Nephilim were, again, like a mule, they were unable to procreate. According to this, it seems like maybe some of the tribes, anyway, maybe not all of them, but some of them were able to procreate. If we look at the skulls and Paracas, right, they're not giants at all. We know that. But the DNA pointed to a Middle Eastern haplogroup, number one. There's genetic differences in the skulls. I mean, all over the place. The eye sockets, let me just turn this around so you can see it. The eye sockets close together, 25 to 30% larger than a normal human being. No sagittal suture. The placement of the foramen magnum is all the way back to the posterior of a skull. I mean, that's just for starters. This is, and again, in our DNA film, you can go there and you can watch that film and you can hear from experts, surgeons, medical doctors, optometrists, chiropractors. It's a whole bevy of people, archaeologists, anthropologists, all coming on the record and stating that whatever this thing is, it's genetic. It's not human. Not human as we know it. So the pupillary distance is about 40 to 45 millimeters instead of what should be 65 millimeters. So they probably had night vision. Again, we know that one of the tribes called the Horites, were cave dwellers, probably had night vision. That's conjecture on my part, but if you're living in a cave, it would stand to reason that maybe you've got something genetically different that allows you to see in the dark. And we know that the Paracas people lived underground. We've talked about that before. Folks, so much more information. If I had the resources and time and money and we could get back down to Peru and I could contact an archaeologist, I would do a dig in that one. We found a chimney that went down. It was sealed with sand, but that could be dug out and we could find out how far down it goes and what was there. It's just so much to do. So much information has been lost. And the narrative, the Peruvian narrative of these skulls, in my opinion, is 100% bogus and wrong on so many different levels. So let's continue. There was another entry, and it is found here in 1 Chronicles 23. And it came to pass after this that there arose a war at Gezer. Stop you right there. In lost civilizations, all right, number 7. I realize it's a shameless plug, but in episode number 7, we go to Tel Gezer, right? We go to Tel Gezer. There's a passageway which goes down to where there was a water source. Well, the tunnel is 20 feet high. And you hear me ask the archaeologist, and I owe this to Bob Ulrich, because Bob said, why don't you ask him this? I said, wow, it's a great question. So I asked the archaeologist who was there, I said, why does a 5'6" Canaanite guy need a 20-foot tunnel? And he was going, yeah, we're still trying to figure that out. Well, I'll tell you why. Because the Canaanites, there were giants there. Now, since we were there, and I guess we were there in 2018, 2017, somewhere in that window of time. I'd have to go back and look. But we couldn't go down into the tunnel now, and Kuti, our guide there, sent Mondo some pictures, who then sent them to me. I'll show you that tomorrow. If I remember, you could send me an email to gently remind me, LA, show the pictures. But now they've constructed a walkway with railings, and it's a pretty steep walkway. But on the right-hand side, looking back up, you can see the original steps that someone carved into this elaborate tunnel works. When we were there, we couldn't go down. Now you can. So let's go again. There arose war at Gezer with the Philistines. Then Sabbakai, the Hushathite, slew Sippai. Some of these names are really tough. I get it. And unless you read them day in and day out, anyway, I apologize for the mispronunciations to all you biblical scholars out there. Thank you. Continuing. of the sons of the giant. Once again, we hear the sons of the giant, and they were subdued. And there was again war with the Philistines. And Elihanan, the son of Jair, slew Lami, the brother of Goliath, the Gittite, the staff of whose spear was like a weaver's beam. And there was again war at Gath. So we're getting information here that to the author of Chronicles, and I believe the ancient Israelites had no problem with this was all common knowledge. It's all been subdued and moved aside. Oh, there's really no such thing as giants. Well, then why don't we have this? Whose staff was a spear, was like a weaver's beam. You know how big a weaver's beam is? We're talking like this. So is that just exaggeration, hyperbole, some colorful language to, entice people to read? I don't think so. It's true. And there was again more at Gath. There was a man of great stature whose fingers and toes were 24, 6 on each hand, 6 on each foot. And he also was born unto the giant. And when he defied Israel, Jonathan, the sons of David's brothers, slew him. And they were born of a giant in Gath, and they fell by the hand of David and by the hand of his servants. So we have in the biblical narrative a link between the giants who were in the Levant, whom I believe were the Nephilim, and the genetic anomaly of 6 fingers, 6 toes. Let's go back and look at that again. If that bowl is 6 inches, then we're looking basically at another 9-footer out on Catalina. So there's 2. There's the one with Ralph Glidden, and there's the 6-fingered guy sitting right here. I'll go back to the original photograph and show you before we move on to something else. Pretty amazing, folks. Okay, UFOs are real, burgeoning, not going away. Before I get that, what are you waiting for? Lost civilizations, when you go there, I believe it's there, but it's in one of them where we actually show that clip from Tel Gezer. I believe it's in Lost Civilizations, episode 7. The DNA is number 6, America Stonehenge. There's so much information. Folks, there is a hidden history that has been deliberately obfuscated from the peoples of the world. That's why I am on the trail. I am excited by this. We're also trying to broaden our audience by going on Jim Bakker's network. I think we've got a sponsor for that, someone who will help us get over the hump, and we'll see what happens with that. We're hopefully when we get back to California, we'll be meeting with this gentleman, and we'll see what happens. But if you feel like contributing to this, then that would be great. It really be great, because we want to reach people with what we believe is the biblical truth. Let me go back. 1 Chronicles, right? 2 Samuel. I'm not making this stuff up. I'm not making it up. Folks, there is a hidden history that has been deliberately obfuscated from the peoples of the world. Please go. Streaming.lamarzulli.net. Streaming.lamarzulli.net. You can also watch our free UFO film right on that site. But let's move on. This is a clip that came to me. Check this out. Close Encounters of the First Kind. And tomorrow, I'm going to talk about close encounters of the first, second, third, fourth, and fifth kind. So there's the light in the sky. This is definitely CE1, close encounters of the first kind. An anomalous light that shouldn't be there. Our good friend in West Texas, Mike Hamilton, had a CE1 sighting as he was coming out of the pasture. He's a cattle rancher, and he had a sighting last night. Orange globe just kind of pulsating like this and just kind of moving along, and it just disappears. LA, what do you think? I said, well, I'll tell you what I think. That's close encounters of the first kind all day long. So when something's that far away, when you hold your finger up and it's the size of your thumbnail or smaller, that's CE1. When that orb or that ship is now within 50 feet, that's CE2. And then we'll talk about CE3, 4, and 5, and the implications of getting up close and personal with these entities may have for you. Remember, rebuke first, ask questions later. So here it is, UFO disclosure, the coming great deception, Luciferian endgame. What are you waiting for? If you've not seen the film, I admonish you to see it. Now, Al Matthews is the centerpiece of that film. Al saw the original film, which was released in 2016. He said, LA, great job, blah, blah, blah. He saw the remake of it and fell out of his chair. He said, oh my gosh, what you've done with the film is just incredible. Folks, I spent a lot of time this year. It was released, actually, last year, 2021. It was released, I think, in the late spring. It's a free film. Please go to YouTube, pass it forward, warn the people. Folks, this is it. And there are 3 other films that we have in the works. We've shot most of the footage for episode 2 and 3. We're still working on episode 4. We've got a lot of the footage for that. So we'll be releasing something, I hope, soon. It's one thing after another. So we're doing the best we can. But we covered your prayers. We head back to SoCal on Tuesday, and we've been gone a month. Really anxious to get back. But thanks so much for watching On the Trail of Nephilim, and of course our daily UFO update. Remember, folks, we'll see you on the air or in the air.
My name is Alan Matthews. I've seen a UFO.
I've seen a UFO.
And I saw a UFO.
A UFO.